We're here on Dawson Street outside the Mansion House, where 100 years ago this month, a very significant event in Irish history took place. We're going to visit the Lord Mayor of Dublin, who's going to tell us more. So we're inside now here with the Lord Mayor in the beautiful surroundings of the Mansion House drawing room, and we're going to have a chat about the first Dáil, which was convened here in the Mansion House 100 years ago. So Lord Mayor, thanks again for hosting us here today in the Mansion House, and we're here to talk about a new exhibition coming up in the Mansion House here itself. But that's celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first Dáil. Can you tell us a little bit about how did the first Dáil end up meeting right here in the Mansion House 100 years ago?
Well, the Mansion House is one of the most significant buildings in Dublin. It's 313 years old, and it would have been very fitting that the first Dáil took place in the Round Room here in January 1919. The Lord Mayor at the time, Lawrence O'Neill, was very heavily committed Republican and would have met the prisoners coming back from Frongok and the internment camps in England in 1917, and would have followed on and wanted the Mansion House to be an open house for all the citizens of Dublin. So it was just quite appropriate and relevant that he would have said, we want the first Dáil held here, and that's how it basically came about. He would have been in contact with Arthur Griffith and the Sinn Féin party, who were the ones who were going to have that first Dáil, and that's how it happened.
So Lord Mayor, you mentioned there about people like Arthur Griffith. There's a lot of very prominent characters from Irish history involved in that first Dáil. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the key people who were involved in that first meeting?
Sinn Féin in the 1918 election had 73 deputies returned. A lot of them were still in prison, people like Count Smartovich, people like Eamon de Valera. Some were elected in two constituencies. For example, again, Eamon de Valera was elected in East Mayo and in East Clare. Lee Mellows was elected in two areas. But basically there were 27 people available to meet. The rest were either in jail or on the run. And among those 27 would have been Arthur Griffith, would have been Count Plunkett. We would have also had, and this is one of the disputes, was Michael Collins and Harry Boland there? Some people say they were there. Some people have said they physically saw them there. Others say it was said they were there to put the British off the scent because they were on the run at the time. So there would have been quite a diverse 27 people, and unfortunately, as you know, Countess Markievicz, being the first woman elected to Westminster, wasn't there at the time because she was in prison.
I read something that one of the reasons Collins, and one of the theories about Collins and Boland, was that they were over planning the Lincoln jailbreak for Dev.
For Dev, yeah.
Which I think that's happened like 3 weeks after.
I think that's true actually, yeah.
So, Lord Mayor, I suppose the 21st of January was a huge date here in the Mansion House because it's the meeting of the first Dáil, but it was a huge date for other reasons in Irish history as well, because that's the commencement date for what we know now as the War of Independence. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Well, of course, the Dáil took place, and later on that afternoon in Sullihead Beg in Tipperary, Dan Breen, Sean Tracy, Sean Hogan, and another 7, I believe there were about 10 of the 3rd Battalion, the Tipperary Brigade, attacked 2 constables bringing gelignite to a quarry at Sullihead Beg, and they shot them, and effectively that was the start of the War of Independence, or it's widely regarded as the day. And it's quite significant that on the one hand we had what was, in the eyes of the British, an illegal assembly, the first Dáil, and on the same day we had an illegal, in the eyes of the British again, act of defiance and shooting dead of 2 constables, and the start of the Civil War. I think Robinson, who was the leader of that, a lot of people think it was Dan Breen and Tracy were the leaders. It was Robinson was the leader of that. He had served in 1916, the others hadn't. And they say that wasn't it was planned by them but wasn't sanctioned by head office, so to speak. But it is widely regarded as the start of the War of Independence. So you have 2 really significant events happening on the same day in Irish history, which is obviously 21st of January 1919.
We don't have just a single day, there's a whole weekend of activity here in the Mansion House throughout January to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the first Dáil. Can you maybe tell us about what the public can expect and where they can find out a bit more information about that?
Yeah, well, as Lord Mayor, and knowing the significance of the event and having a huge interest in that period of Irish history, I decided we have to have the Mansion House open for the 3 days before the 21st. So on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the 18th, 19th and 20th of January, the Mansion House is going to be open to the public. We're going to have an exhibition here. We have the guy who provided most of the memorabilia for the witness history in the GPO, Derek Jones, is putting together a lot of memorabilia on the first Dáil and the lead up to the first Dáil. We're also going to have, luckily enough, for only the third time in my term of office, the Lord Mayor's coach will be taken out on the Saturday. It'll be on the forecourt. That dates back to 1791 and was actually built in my constituency, so it's quite appropriate that I get it out. But I've always insisted that has to be a centre piece of it, because it'll just be such a huge attraction. Throughout the house we're going to have storyboards, we're going to have the historians in residence, the 6 Dublin City Council historians in residence will be here to answer questions. And it's just 3 days where the public are just invited to come into the Mansion House, see the beauty of the house itself, and then learn a lot about the first Dáil and the significance of the Mansion House in the first Dáil. And they will see in the dining room a room where the cabinet would have met, and even later on in history, in 1948, for the first inter-party government, the cabinet met there to where they selected the ministers, etc. So I think people will really enjoy getting an opportunity, and I'm delighted to give people the opportunity to come into the Mansion House and see it in all its splendour and recognise its significant part in Irish history. So, and to get information on that is the DublinTown.ie website, and we're also putting together a commemorative booklet. We've commissioned some key rings to mark the 100th anniversary, and some little pins for suits and that sort of thing. So I think overall it's going to be a great experience, and I'm just urging as many people in Dublin and throughout the country to come into the Mansion House and just see and just absorb the history that's oozing out of the walls of this building.